All right. Hello, everyone. We are now live. You should all be able to hear us now. If not, let us know in the chat if we're coming through loud and clear. But I am super excited to be here, and I'm super excited to have with me Greg Bak. He has a much longer name, but if you're logistically challenged like me, then I'm going to stick with Greg. But welcome, Greg. Thanks.
Hi, hello. Nice to be with you here.
So I'm just trying to get YouTube streaming happening, but that's not working for the moment. But we'll see if we can get that happening later. But never mind. We're here on Crowdcast. That's where the party is happening. So welcome. So today we're going to be talking about ransomware. So some DevOps backups versus ransomware, best security and compliance practices. So Greg, what are we going to be talking about in the webinar today?
During today's webinar, of course, we are going to discuss about ransomware, what ransomware is, some alarming statistics about the ransomware, but also I'm going to share with you good practices, how to protect your repositories against or maybe after ransomware attack. But I hope you are safe enough to prevent ransomware attack. But as we used to say, you can never be sure that ransomware won't hit your repositories, your data. So better be safe than sorry. And that's why we meet today, I think.
All right. So I'm looking forward to it. So first of all, while we're waiting for everyone to join, a couple of mentions, surprises. We do have prizes here today. How do you win prizes? You win prizes by basically participating, by being really noisy and obnoxious. No, not really. But we have polls in there. We have a section to ask a question, and we also have a chat. So feel free to say hello to anyone in the chat. We have people from GitGuardian monitoring this. So if you have any questions about that, let them know in the chat. There's also a section to ask questions. The chat can get quite noisy. So if you have a specific question, you can ask us at any time, and we'll get to that at the end. There's a section there where you can ask a question and you can upvote other people's questions. And finally, we have some polls that we'll go through that you can participate in. So good luck to everyone, and hopefully we are to get some nice participation. Just to my favorite part, because I'm always curious where we are. So I'm tuning in from Paris today. Greg, where are you tuning in from?
Today I'm in Poland, in Gorzów Wielkopolski. So it's the city around 150 kilometers from Berlin, which is German capital. And I'm on the let's say western part of Poland.
So let us know where you're coming from in the chat. I'm always curious to see. There's there Iceland. Whoa, Stockholm, Sweden. I think this is first from Iceland. Welcome. That's cool. Brazil, Paris. Another one from Paris. Bienvenue. Portugal. I'm in Portugal later on this month. It's going to be my first time. Spain.
Uruguay.
Florida. I was in Florida just before the hurricane. I managed to sneak out I was in a conference. I managed to sneak out just before the hurricane. So I hope you're doing well in Florida. Thoughts with you guys all there. Belarus, Malaysia, India. Some really cool places. I always love just to see where everyone's coming from. It always amazes me. I'm from New Zealand. No one's ever said New Zealand yet. It's 5 o'clock in the morning there. But one day I'm hopeful that someone's going to want to know about ransomware so much that they're going to come on at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, first poll that we have today. You'll notice it in there. We're going to reveal the results of these at the end. But have you or your company or organization ever been a victim to ransomware attack? So if you were personally implemented by that, whether or not your organization was, or whether you have just not been affected at all, haven't been affected yet. And as far as I know, no companies have that I've worked with. But it is always curious because the targets are ever changing, as I'm sure Greg will say.
Yeah.
Now we have one other way that you can win an Amazon gift card with GitGuardian, and that is our secrets management fails. So these are stories that we compile about some funny things that have happened around secrets management. I'm going to share one with you today. This one, it's one of my favorite. It's hilarious. It's borderline appropriate for walk, but we're gonna go through it here today. So I'm going to read this. This was an anonymous one. That is an option. It's anonymous for reasons you'll understand soon. But this is one of my favorite stories. So back when I was an intern at another company, my second day on the job in InfoSec, there was a news report that the Navy was hacked. My manager, wanting to see my research skills, wanted me to investigate how it happened. Long story short, the Navy was hacked by a smart sex toy, and the first week on the job as an intern, I had to present to a panel of my peers, mentors, managers, and senior executives the importance of IoT security devices like smart sex toys from China, because default passwords allow them to be hacked and then to steal secret data from the Navy. So yeah, today I'm still embarrassed by this story, but they liked my report. So we find secrets everywhere, default passwords. We also find hard-coded secrets in IoT devices. So this is a pretty funny story that we've had. If you have a funny story about secrets management, then let us know. You can email us. You can reach out to me on Twitter @AdvocateMac, and you can win some prizes from sharing great stories like this. I wouldn't recommend trying to Google. I was trying to find additional research on this. This is probably not something you should be doing at work. But anyway, moving along from that, a couple more polls before I'm going to hand it over to Greg and let him get into it. So some other questions that we have. Is ransomware something that is a concern for you or your company? Is it a high priority, medium priority, low priority, or you're not worried at all about ransomware? You live in the good life. And the final one that we have in a poll is asking you, do you back up your source code? So do you do automated backups, manual, regular backups, occasional backups, or no backups of your source code in a structured way? So that's it. I'm going to quickly turn off my screen, and I'm going to invite you to share your screen. Give me just a minute there, Greg.
Yeah, sure.
All right, you should be able to share your screen now.
Yeah, and I think I can. And I hope right now you can see my screen quite well, or not. Can you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, at least I can.
Yeah, perfectly. So I think it's time to start talking about our backup, and of course about ransomware, how to deal with ransomware, about some alarming statistics and so on. So before I start, I would like to give you just quick overview to our company, who we are and what experience we have to talk about backup. So in general, Zopro Software, who is producer of GitProtect, our backup platform, is a leading backup and disaster recovery provider around the world. Our services are available in more than 15 countries, and we've got around 30 years of experience in data backup and presence on the market. Nowadays, we are protecting hundreds of thousands of the customers. And if you are thinking what customers, what big brands are behind our company, here you can see a few of brands that are using GitProtect to protect their Git repositories. So there are some companies from public sector, like for example NHS, which is National Health Service in Great Britain, or for example Red, which is I think one of the greatest camera producer. They are making cameras especially for Hollywood. And that's all about the company. I don't want to make you bored, so let's talk about ransomware, about its most alarming statistics. But I think, first of all, we have to start and answer the question, what is ransomware? I think most of you know what ransomware is, but of course it's malware with some significant signs like it's blocking access to your data by its encryption or erasing. So in general, when ransomware will hit your data, your computers, or any external services, its main task is to block access to your systems, to your data, or to anything else what's get infected, usually by encryption or by just data erasement. Of course, as its name points, ransomware demands you to pay the ransom for getting back access to your data. And in the last years, we observed that ransomware is not only blocking the access, but also it's stealing your data. And then your data gets exposed if you didn't pay the ransom. So it's another way to force you to pay the ransom after your data gets encrypted. So it's not so good malware, as you can see. It hits many companies, many different personal users, and you should be aware if you don't want to get your data encrypted. Ransomware isn't something new on the market. It's longer on this world even than I. So ransomware is 33 years in the market. The first version of ransomware has been released in 1989. It was named 8, and it was developed on 5-inch floppy disks. Its main task was to encrypt files on the computers, and after that, it changed the names and locations of those files. Then yeah.
I wanted to know how did this spread? You said it was on a floppy disk. You know, like this is different to the malware that we're dealing with today that spreads, almost by itself.
Now 1989, so there were no internet at all, I think, and it was spread just using standard mails. So it was sent from, as far as I remember, Great Britain, and it was sent across the attendees of some HAF conference that was focused especially on AIDS. So that was the way of targeting the victims. The attackers just get the list of attendees of the conference, and by normal post mailing they send those information. Moreover, information about the ransom that has to be paid was just printed out from the printers. It was not displayed on the screens, but after around 19 restarts of your computers, you were asked to turn on the printer or to connect the printer, and after that, the information was just printed out. So crazy behavior, crazy way to develop ransomware. But
it's like a hotkey, like a USB hotkey that we have today, but in a floppy disk back.
Exactly. So that's the way that the first ever known ransomware was working. But of course, nowadays we've got a lot of different kinds of ransomware. It's not sent to you on a floppy disks, but you can get infected in many different ways, and it causes a lot of damages. Average ransom demanded in the third quarter of last year was around $140,000 of USD. So it's quite a lot, I think, if your data gets encrypted and you have to get them back for such a price. But usually you don't have other way to get them back if you don't have backup in place. But moreover, what's more alarming about the statistic, around 32% of victims pay the ransom, but restore only around 65% of their data. So even if you will decide to pay the ransom, you don't have guarantee that you won't get your data, that you will get your data back. Moreover, as we said before, ransomware also steals your data, expose them if you won't pay the ransom. So you cannot be sure that such thing would happen again to you, that attackers won't ask you for another ransom, because instead of they will publish your data again. So that's why you have to be safe and secure against the ransomware. But
Right.
as we know,
It's not just encrypting. There's always
yeah,
the threat of them publicly exposing it, and we saw that like this year with Lapsus. Their threat was basically to expose their source code over these companies, and it wasn't necessarily that it was encrypted. There's multiple threats when it comes from ransomware.
yeah, it's from the attacker perspective. I think it's a great way to force you to pay the ransom. So give me the money, otherwise I will show you to everyone what you've got in your files. I will show you all your data, all sensitive, confidential information, and I'm quite sure that there is no company who wants to expose those data to public.
No, I mean, especially not with the amount of sensitive information that we find in such data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another one alarming statistic is about number of cases. So in the first half of this year, there were 236 million of ransomware cases discovered. In previous year, there was around 623 millions, but it was above average growth. But still, we can say that ransomware is growing up year by year, because 2 years before, there were more than 300 millions of ransomware cases. So year by year, number of ransomware cases is growing up, and I'm quite sure it will be growing up. So what causes the ransomware? What are the vector attacks? I'm afraid and I'm scared that the most common way of ransomware infection is phishing email. It causes 2/3 of ransomware infections. What means that we are opening some malicious emails, some attachments that we shouldn't open, and of course it means that IT staff, IT personnel is not well trained, and there are not enough security measures in place to prevent such situations like phishing email. Other quite common vector attacks are not patched and updated systems and softwares, and also credentials exposure. And here is the time to talk about the first known and well-described ransomware attack, which targets all commonly used, and I think all services that provides you Git repository hosting, and we are talking, of course, about GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket users. This ransomware wiping code, commits, and anything else from multiple repositories, and leave only ransomware nodes to pay around, I don't remember exactly, but it was something around 100, not 100. I'm sorry, it was around less than 1 Bitcoin for accessing your data. So in general, affected companies, affected organizations lost access to their source code, to their repositories, to any metadata, and anything else what they are storing on such services like GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. And it was caused by credentials exposure. GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket find out that there was credential leak from some external systems not connected with them, of course, but also in some encrypted or erased repositories. They were also some credentials stored. So that's why it was quite easy for the attackers to access to those repositories and erase all data by overwriting. I think by overwriting the head branch. You can find a lot of your information about this access, about this attack, because after attack, GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket describe it pretty well, and they also publish some more information about how it happened and what they did together. And of course, as far as I understand, GitGuardian can help you to prevent such situations like credentials exposure. Am I right?
I didn't even have to do the plug. You did the plug for me. That's fantastic. Well, what I was going to say too with this is that GitGuardian discovered we scan every public commit that goes onto github.com. That's maybe how you found out about GitGuardian. But last year we found 60,000 credentials for well, on GitHub, we found 60,000 GitHub tokens. So we found 60,000 access tokens to private repositories in public Git repositories. So people are accidentally committing their, access credentials to their GitHub accounts. What's really concerning about this is that GitHub often shares accounts. You often have one account for GitHub and you use it for both personal and professional. Maybe, so by leaking even if it's just your personal GitHub OAuth token, you could give access to your private repositories. So in the case, credentials exposed here was how the attackers were wiping this. Well, I mean, I could imagine a scenario where you could easily set up a bot that looks for GitHub tokens on public GitHub repositories, goes in there, wipes everything, demands a ransom. 60,000 GitHub tokens. I'm just talking about GitHub tokens. We found last year. So, I mean, yeah, for sure we can do this. And yeah, as you said, GitGuardian, yeah, we can help. Nice plug. I'll give you a beer afterwards.
I'm afraid of the number of tokens you just find out only in GitHub. So I don't want even to think about GitLab or Bitbucket or any other Git services because I think those numbers only can increase. So it shows that you have to be sure and aware of any credential exposure, and everyone can make a mistake. So that's why you need also solutions like GitGuardian. So the ransomware, of course, is not the only reason why you should back up your data. So just quickly, let's take a look at other reasons. We often hear that someone have repos on every developer's computers, that have never lost any data, or making maybe copies by using the scripts. So we are talking about usually manual backups, but it's not true. And with those sentences, you cannot stay safe. Why? Because Git copy consists of repositories, but also metadata. So quite often when we are talking with our potential customers, with our users, they find out that even more valuable for them are metadata like pull requests, like some comments, like some issues, or maybe wiki stored directly in the repository than just only the source code. Also, not all repositories are stored on developers' computers. So if you think that you are safe because you've got your repositories locally, or maybe they are on other developers' computers, it's not true. And you're not safe because usually only those active repositories are stored on developers' computers. Moreover, it's possible scenario that ransomware will infect their computers, and after that also will erase your remote repositories. And of course, the data that you're working on shouldn't be treated as backup because it's your working copy, which you are using on your daily basis. And if we are talking about the scripts, they are usually unreliable. They require manual maintenance. Very often such backups are not tested at all. So even if you have backup done by the scripts, you are not sure if you will be able to restore your data. What else about the scripts? Of course, quite often they don't contain those metadata we've just talked about. They contain only usually pure source code. And moreover, statistics says that manual backups are usually older than half a year. So after half a year, your data are usually useless for you because, as we know, the world is running pretty fast and there are a lot of changes among your source code and repositories within such half a year. There is also shared responsibility model, known also as limited liability, and it's of course provided by GitHub, GitLab, and Atlassian. They recommend having additional third-party backup software for data protection because they are responsible for service accessibility, uptime, security, but you as the end user are responsible for data protection and any legal compliance. And if we are talking about compliances, this is another reason why you should have backup in place, because a lot of different certifications and compliances requires to back up your the most important and sensitive data. So this is another legal reason why you should back up your data. And now it's time to take a look at backup best practices, how to protect your data well, of course, how to protect your Git data well. First of all, your backup should be done frequently and automatically because, as we said before, manual backups are usually older than half a year. So that's good to make automatic protection of all repositories, no matter if they are already active or not, because you never know when you will need to access to your repositories. There are a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that quite dynamically or even very dynamically are creating their repositories. So it's good if you are able to automatically take all of them for backup and don't worry about any newly added, for example. It's also good to make backups in the incremental and differential manner because in that way you don't need to send too many data at once and you are just fetching from your Git repository only the change part of the data. And of course, in terms of source code, it's not a big deal to make every time full copy of your data because usually source code is not so big and it doesn't take so much space and size in terms of data. But if we'll take a look at those metadata just mentioned, you need to know that each provider like GitHub, GitLab, or Atlassian provider of Bitbucket, they are providing some API rate limits. And if you will try every time to fetch the entire metadata content, you are sending a lot of requests that are not needed because those data are already in backup. So thanks to it, your backup is way faster.
Why is it important to back up metadata, as well, as opposed to just the source code? Or am I jumping ahead?
I just said before that a lot of companies find out they comments issues or pull requests, or for example LFS, which is also not a direct part of your repository, they find out those data sometimes even more important than just pure source code. Moreover, you've got your source code on your local computers. Usually you've got some local repos with source code, but not with metadata, because those metadata are stored only in those external services like GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. So if you will protect them, you will be also able easily to restore them, to restore your entire service setup, like, for example, users, permissions, and of course, comments, pull request issues, and so on. So that's why I think it's quite important for our users to protect also metadata, not only the source code, because as we said, source code is stored on the developers' computers. Of course, it's not a backup, but there is some way of protection for that data. Yeah, so that's why I find out important to protect the metadata. But also it's quite important to have full control over the scheduler. I think that you should be quite familiar with those API rate limits if you are using, for example, some CI/CD tasks. And if you will get run out of those limits, your CI/CD tasks, your pipelines are not able to run because of the limits. And if at the same time the backup will be done, which is using the same API, because each of those vendors have single API, there is no different API, for example, for pipelines and other accesses, then if backup will be done at the same time as your pipelines, for example, are running, it will faster run out your requests limit. It's also good to have maybe not unlimited number of backup policies, or enough number of backup policies to divide your backup, for example, to the most important and less important repositories, to current and archive repositories, to give you the full control over how often, when the backup is done. And of course, we cannot forget about the data retention, which says how long your data stays in the backup with you. And it's also good to have flexible data retention when you can set it up to your needs, to your requirements, to compliance rules, and anything else what you need. And about repos, why it's covering all data, we've just said that not all data are usually protected. Even if you are making your backups over the scripts, usually you are protecting only your source code, only repository, without those additional metadata like comments, like pipeline configuration, like permissions, accesses, and so on. I don't know if you ever heard about 3-to-1 rule in terms of backup, which says that you should keep your copy you should have 3 copies of your data in 2 different locations and at least 1 offsite. So that's why also you should be able to keep your backups in multiple locations. And if you are looking for any backup solution, even if you are going to deploy any script on your own, you should be aware of supporting some additional backup storages, not only, for example, the local one, but also it's good to have support for some cloud services, especially for some public cloud services. Of course, we don't want to make the backup twice, for example, firstly to your local storage and then from the source directly to the cloud, because it's inefficient because of API rate limits. So that's why it's also nice to have efficient and reliable replication, which sends data directly from one data store to another one without accessing your Git service. Of course, everything must be as secure as possible. The backup itself is some security measure, but of course, it's also good to have the backup encrypted. Otherwise, some third party may access your data from backup, and it's another way your data can leaks. So that's why it's very important to keep in mind that your backup should be encrypted, the best in flight and at rest. What means the data is encrypted as fast as possible on the agent or maybe on the script side, and also it should be stored in the encrypted form. Usually, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say this is such a good point, because I just wanted to, before I forget to mention this, people often say to us, we talk about this concept of secret sprawl, your secret sprawling. And one of the areas that I say your secrets often sprawl to is in backup servers. And these are often targeted by attackers because they have, complete backups of them. So it's super important that it's encrypted. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's a common kind of talking point that we have to go through about backups, because there's so much sensitive information and secrets in source code and repositories. Even if it shouldn't be there, it is there. And when you're backing up in multiple places and all that, you're adding to secret sprawl unless that data is encrypted. So a really good point. I just wanted to inject before I forgot.
but it was good injection to this presentation to say about it loudly, because even if anyone will access to your data that are encrypted, he won't be able to read anything what's inside of your repository, for example, so you can be safe. And if we are talking about secrets, of course, any backup solution must have some secrets which allows to access to your organization, to your repository. So you must be sure it's managing your secrets in the most secure way is it possible. Also, it's good to have immutable backup storage, because as we said, we never know when and in what way ransomware hits. So with immutable backup storage, you can be sure that even if the ransomware will access somehow to your backup environment, your data will be still there on the storage, not encrypted by the ransomware. Usually it's realized by worm policy, which is write once, read many, and it allows only to particular application to write the data or maybe to modify them, but any other application, and even the application which writes the data is not allowed to remove the data unless retention policy, for example, is met. There are different ways of worm implementation, so everything depends on the storage you are using. We are lazy. Everyone is lazy. So that's why management of backup should be effortless. You shouldn't spend too much time on setting up some backup policies or, for example, on monitoring of your environment. Everyone wants to have anything right under the hand and check the most important things with just a few clicks. So that's why it's nice to have some automated reports, email, Slack, or maybe over the webhooks. And also, usually, we don't want to access over SSH to some machine where there is script running because it's not so secure. And the best way is to have maybe some browser access. So just to remind, effortless management should be also important. Otherwise, you won't be configuring the backup as it should be configured. You won't be monitoring the backup, and maybe the backup will be failing for some couple of days or even weeks, and you won't know about it. So just to prevent such situations, try to find the solution which doesn't need too much effort from your side to manage the backup. And of course, if we are talking about backup, we must also talk about restore and disaster recovery. What to do in case of ransomware attack, how to restore the data, and what possibilities, what opportunities you should have to be able to restore the data. First of all, of course, you should be able to restore multiple repositories at once. With scripts, usually you need just to restore repository after the repository. It takes time to restore, to configure such process, and usually in case of any disaster, we would like to continue our businesses, our daily works as fast as it possible. Also, you should be able to restore to the same or different Git service, and sometimes it's even more important to have possibility to restore to different Git than the source one, because, for example, in case of any outage, any I don't know, service issues, service errors, like for example, let's say GitHub becomes unavailable for 2 days, and you can easily restore, you should be able easily restore your service, maybe to GitHub on premise or maybe to another Git service. Of course, you should be able also to select exact point in time you want to get back your data from, because maybe last backup contains encrypted by ransomware data. So sometimes you have to restore not the latest one version, but one of the previous. You should be also able to recover your data to some local machines, because backup is not always disaster recovery. Sometimes you are restoring it for some other issues. Maybe you would like to download locally some archived repositories, maybe for some forensic issues, and other reasons you are just need to fetch it locally. It's also good to control resources that should be restored, because not always you may want to restore, for example, or metadata or maybe LFS or anything else. So usually it's very important for the end users to have the control over the entire process. And one of the most important things, I think, in terms of restore, because everyone makes mistakes, so backup solution shouldn't allow you to overwrite your data that are on your production environment, that are your own GitHub organization, because otherwise, if you will be under stress after losing some important data, you can overwrite your data, existing data, by mistake, and then you can cause bigger disaster than it was before you restore. So
you cannot overstate the poor decisions that we all make when under pressure and facing and facing these challenges that we have. So that's a great point. And Mohammed in the chat, I'm glad that there's another GitLab user in
there. Yeah, but of course GitLab also needs backup. I believe, I'm quite sure any other every Git service needs backup. As for example, the attack I talked about in the beginning, it affects all of them: GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket. So it's not about the service we are using, but in general, everyone must be safe. And at the beginning, I've just mentioned just a few words about GitProtect and Zero software. So if you don't know what GitProtect is, I think this is the most professional DevOps ecosystem backup and disaster recovery software. Using our experience, our great backup platform, we've developed GitProtect.io, which is dedicated for DevOps ecosystem protection. Right now, it protects GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and Jira. So the most important, I think, for DevOps ecosystem resources are already protected by GitProtect. GitProtect, of course, provides you all those security measures we just talked about, gives you all those good practices available for you. You can define multiple backup plans, as many as you need. You can integrate as many different organizations into single GitProtect instance, which could be running locally. So we are talking about on-premise installation, but also you can easily run GitProtect as a service directly in our cloud. So you don't need to worry about setting up any additional environment, for example, for a backup purposes, and everything will be safe and secure in our cloud. Of course, there you've got the full control over the retention, over the scheduler. There is support for multiple different backup storages, so you can store your data, of course, locally on some local network resources. For example, you can use some public clouds like AWS S3, like Azure, and any other S3 compliant vendor. But of course, also as a service provider, we are providing you our own storage for data backup. And I think I don't need to talk too much about our solution, about our service, and it will be the best if I will present it to your live, or maybe even if you will check it out on your own, because stay with us until the end. We've got some promo specially prepared for you. So let me change the screen I'm going to share with you. I would like to see how I can do it. So please give me just 1 second to change the screen I'm presenting to you, because demo I've got prepared.
I'll take this moment to remind everyone that they can ask questions directly to Greg in the Q&A section. It's on the right-hand screen, next to the chat, next to the polls. So if you have questions, we've got a few in there, but if you have questions specifically about ransomware, about backups, or if you just want to throw a curveball out there, feel free to use that one. We'll be answering those after the demo.
I can see that there are already 3 questions, and even one is yours. I'm just taking a look at them. If there is anything I can include in my demo. But I think I don't have already any question that I can try to answer over the demo. But of course, if you will have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I will also try to put them in a demo. I will also be taking a look on the chat during the demo, but I don't want to make it so long, because I believe the better is to check everything on your own to make sure it meets your needs, instead of just watching the demos, because on the demo usually everything works super fine, super well, and in the real world it may be quite different. But of course, not with GitProtect. It works in real world in the same way as during the demo.
I want to know what kind of demos you're doing, because every time I do a live demo, everything goes wrong.
Yeah. Because if something has to go wrong, definitely it will go wrong during the demo.
All right, let's go. I'm holding my breath for you. We can do it. No, I'm kidding. Of course, it's going to go fine.
Yeah. Just keep fingers crossed. Okay, so what you can see already on the screen is my GitProtect instance running directly in the cloud. What you can see here by the URL. So first of all, let's start maybe with GitHub integration. Let me show you how easy it is. So here I've got prepared my GitHub account with some repositories in place, and let me just edit and firstly remove my GitHub organization. Let's refresh, and there is no GitHub in place. Let's even refresh the entire page just to prove there is no GitHub in place. And there is no at all. So now what I need to do is to add organization, select the service. We are talking about GitHub. There is also support for GitHub self-managed and other services like GitHub or Bitbucket. And I had a question. I saw a question on a chat. What if GitHub crashes? Then you can restore your data, for example, to GitLab or Bitbucket or to GitHub self-managed. So there are a lot of different ways and opportunities, but let's start with GitHub integration. You can integrate GitHub with GitProtect in two different ways. You can do it as OAuth application, what I'm going to do right now, or you can also register, integrate over login and token. Here we have to decide how often the list of repositories should be synced, and here is quite important thing to automatically add new repositories to protection. What means they will be assigned automatically to backup plans if you will configure them to protect all of your repositories. So let's not waste our time. Let's proceed. And as you can see here, everything is done automatically. I've made it before, so the OAuth application has granted permissions on my account. But of course, at any time, I can remove them and do it from scratch, but I'm not going to do so. Okay, so now we've got our GitHub already added. Let's refresh. And here it is at the bottom. So in the next step, we just need to assign a backup plan. I've got multiple backup plans in place because I'm using this instance of GitProtect for a demo purposes. So maybe let me create a new backup plan. I don't want to stay with the existing one. And here, in the first step in general, you have to decide which repositories would you like to protect. You can decide to protect all of them, no matter how many repositories you've got already or you will have in the future, or just selected repositories. And here is the list of repositories you have already on your Git organization. So let's stay maybe with protection of all of them. In the next step, you have to choose what metadata or what data would you like to protect. If it will be only repository, which obviously must be protected, but you can control if you want or not to protect your metadata. And as you can see, there are a lot of different metadata available. They are changed, depends on the service we are protecting, but today we are focusing on GitHub. So for example, we can protect your deployment keys, maybe some projects, some teams. Under teams and collaborators, of course, there are also some permissions. So that's the list of the repositories we are protecting. And I think it's quite important to protect them as we talked before. So let's save. And in the next step, the third step in general, you have to select storage for your backups. Here I've got just one storage in place, which is of course provided by the GitProtect. It's called Sopra Storage. But at any time, I can create a new storage. I can assign a new storage to GitProtect. It could be, for example, some local directory. So I just need to install the agent on my computer, and then I can back up everything locally to my local machines. It could be also network location available over SMB or NFS, and the rest of public clouds I've mentioned before. So I believe all the most common cloud services are supported by GitProtect too. But let me stay with a backup storage selection, which I've got already in place. So I'm not going to create any new backup. And then it's time to schedule the backup. Let me just take a look only on the chat because I had displayed the question, the Q&A section. Is there anything? I think already the question not related. Okay, if we don't have any related, let's continue. There are no questions I can present during the demo. So let's go with the scheduler. As I said before, it's quite important to have the full control over the scheduler. For example, to not interact with your pipeline, with your CI/CD tasks, to left the API limits all for them. So you've got the full control in GitProtect. How often, for example, the full backup is done. My recommendation is to stay with a monthly setting. There is no need to make it more often than once per month. And the same we can do for incremental copy, which contains only the change part of your data since the last backup has been done. So with incremental copy, you can, for example, set it up to make it even every few hours, let's say every 4. There are some other settings related to the scheduler, but they are not so important in terms of GitHub and in general of Git repository backup. But here at the bottom, you've got the task balancing, and it could be quite important if you've got a lot of repositories to be protected, because it can help you to deal with those API limits we don't like. And for example, we can reduce the maximum number of concurrent tasks up to 3. That's even GitHub recommendation as far as I remember. So in general, we are not accessing more than 3 different repositories at once. And about the retention, as I said during the slides, it's nice to have full control over the retention, so you can decide how long, for example, full and incremental backups should be stored. Good practice says to keep your full backups quite a long period of time. Let's say, for example, for 3 years, and your incremental, your daily backups, they don't need to be stored so long because it's your active copy. So let's stay with 1 month of every 4-hour backup resolution available. So let's apply, let's save. And at the end, we've got some advanced settings. Here, for example, you can find the encryption. And of course, my recommendation is to enable the encryption always for each kind of backup. GitProtect encrypts data using AES algorithm, which is unbreakable, so literally no one can access to your data without knowledge of the encryption key, which is stored as all other GitProtect credentials in the secure password manager. It's a part of our management service. Of course, all passwords and all secrets that are stored in this secure password manager are encrypted as well. But in the near future, we are also going to provide support for external credentials provider, like, for example, Azure Vault. So stay tuned with us, because also we will give you this opportunity. So let me set up some encryption key quickly. I hope not to make mistake. All the requirements are met. So let's name it just a key. And let me say, if I would like to encrypt my backup to follow good practices. And here at the end, if there are additional Git credentials you can provide. With GitHub, we are limited up to 5,000 API requests per hour. And if you want to improve the number of requests we can send, you can create additional GitHub users and provide us their access tokens. So when one of those users will be run out of the requests, then GitProtect will switch to another one, and we will have also improved number of requests available to be sent. Okay, there is a question about compression. So in general, all data, not only the metadata, but also your source code is compressed. As you can see there, you've got the full control over the compression algorithm as well as the compression level. But I think compression is not so important in terms of Git backup, because the size of the data is not so big, and usually if we are talking about compression algorithms or compression levels, we are talking about, for example, physical environments backups or virtual ones, because also it's supported by maybe not by GitProtect, by ZoPro1, the platform GitProtect is based on. So that's all about the advanced settings, and in general about backup plan configuration. So let me name the backup plan like GitGuardian cross GitProtect, and just save and run to start the backup. And let's quickly go to the tasks, because this backup should be pretty fast. We've got 12 repositories to be protected in general, with limited number of concurrent repositories under the backup, up to 3. So all of them, those 3 repositories are already in progress, and we need to wait for one of them to be finished to start another one. As you can see, we are on the writing phase. So right now the data are writing on your backup storage, and they are fetching at the same time, of course, from your Git account. We can see that the repository is already successfully protected, so we are fetching the metadata. And yeah, that's the way we can monitor how our backups are done. So right now we just need to wait a while for the backup to be completed. But of course, obviously, I've got some other backups already done, and I saw that there were some questions about the data restore. So I would like to show you also how easily you can restore your backups. And in the meantime, I believe everything will be also completed. So let me just take a look in the meantime also to the Q&A panel. Is it possible to use GitProtect? For encryption part, is it possible to import our own encryption key? So answering this question, I think I've answered this question, but let me just say it one more time. At this moment, you have to provide all encryption keys manually to our secure password manager, but within the next 2 releases, as far as I remember, we are going also provide support for external credentials providers, like for example Azure Vault. So it will be another way to provide your encryption keys using such third-party service. And in the meantime, as you can see, I've got 2 repositories successfully protected. The first one is WordPress, and the second one is also WordPress, but with the second one is also WordPress, but with timestamp for restore. If the backup is already done, we can also take a look, for example, at number of successfully protected resources: 9 labels, 1 collaborator, 1 repository successfully restored. Source data size was around 300 megabytes, and pretty similar or even a little bit greater protected data size, because there are some additional information written directly by GitProtect. So as we've got already backup done, let's head into the DevOps tab, because here we've got all our organizations already added. Scroll down to GitHub, and let's go to manage and restore. There is a list of all repositories that you've got already available and are synced with GitProtect. Each repository, of course, have some nice dashboard available, so you can, for example, take a look how well it's protected. Here, for example, we've got storage utilization by this particular repository. It was baked up many times before, so that's why it's around 3 gigabytes. Even there, you can see that within the last 7 days, there was 42 in total successful backups, not restores, but everything, excuse me, is about the backup. And of course, we've got also access to recent notifications that are related to this particular repository. Oh, and this is RoboVM, pretty nice framework for iOS development, which allows you to provide your source code in Java for iOS. Yeah, but we've recently talked about WordPress. It's already protected, so let's head into restart. Here we've got the list of available backup plans that has been recently done, and at the end there is GitProtect, GitGuardian, and GitProtect. So then there will be a list of backup versions loaded. So we need to wait a while. I hope it's not my internet connection. And after that, I will have to just select the version I'm going to restore, and then I would like to continue. But as we said before, if something has to go wrong, it will go wrong during. Yeah, and here we've got two backups versions already done, and even it was fast enough to make one more incremental copy, as you can see. And since we've created our backup plan, so this backup has been done twice, which is pretty fast. So the full copy has been created at 2 minutes before 6 p.m. here in Poland, and incremental was created at 6 p.m. So let's restore the increment. And in the next step, we have to decide what metadata we would like to restore together with the repository, because obviously repository should be restored always. And yeah, probably it's because the backup, which is already in progress.
Let's
Yeah, here we are. There are 2 tasks left to be completed, so I believe the last 2 repositories are already baked up. And yeah, here we've got collaborators and LFS in this repository, what we saw also in the backup summary, and I would like to restore all the metadata. So let's head into the last step to restore selected. As you can see, the encryption key is selected automatically because it's already in my secure password manager. Otherwise, you will have to provide it manually. By default, there is added label to restored elements. So you can easily find it out on GitHub site that this repository has been restored. We are going to restore it under the custom name you can see below, but of course you can provide your own name. Let's name it like Git Webinar. At the end, we can reduce bandwidth, but it has no sense if we are using our cloud worker, which is the agent set up directly in our cloud. So there is one more important thing I forgot to mention. You have, or you can choose where do you want to restore. And I think by this, I can answer also to one question related to data restore. So if, for example, GitHub goes down, you can, from this point of view, easily select GitLab, Bitbucket, or any other organization you've got already implemented into GitProtect.
That's cool, because that was a discussion that people were having in the chat. What happens if all the world is on GitHub? What happens if it goes down? Well, if you've got GitProtect, what happens is you move to a different VCS, a different server, because you have your data.
Yeah, this is, in general, this is also another use case you can follow with GitProtect, and you can use our software also to migrate the data between one service to another one. For example, if you want to move out from Bitbucket to GitHub, there is no easier way than to use GitProtect with all your issues, pull requests, and anything else, because we allow you easily to cross recovery of your data. And of course, not only to Git organizations you can restore your data, but also to your local devices. It requires you to download and install the agent, but we've got prepared agents, I think, for all operating systems available on the market, Linux, macOS, and Windows. So you can easily download and install the agent there to restore the data locally. But let's stay with GitHub with the same account the data comes from. We've just changed name of our repository. So let me press start now. Let's go to tasks quickly. And let's take a look at our backup, which is already in progress. And the restore process gets initialized. So as you can see, the summary of restore process is pretty similar. So let's wait a while for the data to be restored. And let's take a look, for example, at our last 30 days. So here we've got the list of the tasks that has been done within the last 30 days in general. And for example, you can see the GitGuardian cross GitProtect backup has been done today twice. The first was for all repositories we have, and the second one was only for 4 repositories, because when it was triggered, the rest of repositories were awaiting for this first one to be completed. It took around 7.5 minutes to complete the entire backup, and at the same time 2.5 minutes to complete incremental backup for those 4 repositories. But as you can see, for 30 days, you've got very detailed information about everything you baked up. After this period, of course, you can access to your logs, and here you will find all information about everything what's going on in your GitProtect instance, because we can say it's very detailed audit log, and each action that took place in GitProtect is logged there. As you can see, I've got quite a lot number of entries. And waiting for the repository to be restored, just to let you know, of course, you can find them email, Slack, and webhook notifications. You can also decide if you would like, for example, to receive notification about successfully finished tasks. Usually, I've disabled such notification, as most of the administrators does as well, because they say they don't want to be informed if something is successfully, because it produces the communication mess and chaos, and sometimes you can easily miss some important information. So that's nice to have this control as well. Of course, you can also easily create some additional administrative account, and I believe the rest of those features you will be able to verify on your own. Here we've got around 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes, and almost the entire repository has been restored. And it already has been restored, so we just need to quickly jump to the second tab to last 30 days to take a look at the backup at restore summary, not backup. And we can easily find out that everything repository 9 labels have been restored successfully. We don't need to restore the collaborator. The permissions are assigned to the repository automatically. Collaborator, of course, exists in GitHub, and we are not able to restore the account. We are restoring repository in metadata, so all related information. And at the end, let's go back to DevOps. Here we've got our 12 repositories, but if we'll get to manage and restore, there is sync now button available. The number of repositories just increased. And let's try to find, and here it is, WordPress Git webinar. Under that name, we've restored our repository, so it's available. There is no last backup time because it wasn't baked up yet. And I think we can finish there our demo. So that's all what I had prepared for you today in terms of demo. I hope also I've covered all or maybe most of the questions from the chat. I also try to take a look at the questions you've asked in the Q&A panel. Let me change the screen to the previous one, which says before that we are going to head into live demo. And where's my screen?
So just quickly, the recording link will be available. So if you want to go back and look at the demo, for those asking in the chat, that you'll be able to come back to this exact page and once we've ended the webinar and watch it there. So Q&A, we do have to be, I think you've answered most of it. We're over time, so we do have to wrap it up pretty quickly.
Okay, so come on, go on.
No, you go for it.
Okay, so why is it important to back up metadata as well? We've talked about it a lot, I think, during today's webinar, but just to remind, because metadata are not included into your source code, they usually stays only in the service you're using, like GitHub, and you don't have any other place with those metadata available. So that's why you have to protect them. Metadata are not only comments, are not only issues, but of course there are also permissions, LFS, and way more. Is ransomware a threat for telephone devices? To be honest, I don't have in my mind already any known attacks of the ransomware, and I should Google for it, but every device connected to network is or can be threatened by the ransomware. So also on our mobile devices, we should be aware against the ransomware. Okay, is it possible to back up configurations of third parties integrated in GitHub? CCID tools, static code analysis tools, for example, it might be done via metadata, I guess. To be honest, it depends, but usually we are not able to access to such data. Everything depends if such third party provides any access to those data over GitHub. Usually they require some external accesses, so those data are not protected already by GitProtect. But if you've got some known and nice third party in mind you would like to have protected, let us know, because we are continuously developing our software and maybe it will be put on our roadmap. Is it possible to use GitProtect for free when working on a 16-member project as university students? 16 project, it's quite small team, but usually it depends on the number of repositories. But if you will get, for example, to GitHub Marketplace, and if you will type there GitProtect, oh, you can't see my screen, so let me maybe try to, I don't know why the screen disappeared. Some issues. Yeah, there is a screen. So one more time. Okay, let's go to the marketplace. Oh, you can't see my screen yet, but already
we can see it now.
Gets
up
okay,
the screen.
Yeah. Okay, perfectly. So right now we are in GitHub Marketplace, and if we'll type there GitProtect, here you can find our software, and there is free version of GitProtect you can use. It's limited up to 15 repositories. So if you are not over exceeding the number of these repositories, you can easily protect them for free with no fees at all. Okay, about the encryption key, I've just answered, so it's already not possible, but we are going to implement Azure Vault as external secret provider, which notifications channel are available to the user in case of failure. So you can be notified over email, Slack, and there are also webhooks. So you can assign any service which supports webhooks. Is there any notification logic when the responsible person not resolve the issue, the second person is notified? Oh, it's not our task. We are just making a backup of your data. Quite often, your backup is encrypted on the storage, so we are not analyzing the content of your repository. We'll have access. If I understand correctly, GitProtect will have access to our code for backup processes. Yes, it will. Otherwise, we won't be able to make backup of your data. But of course, you can assign, for example, GitProtect using access token, and in that way, you can also easily control what GitProtect has access to. Okay, and I think this was the last question I have to answer.
There's one more. Someone wants to know if they can have a T-shirt like yours.
You know, we don't have any special promo about the tickets about the T-shirt prepared, but just let us know, and you want, just contact me directly, and I will find something for you.
Does that go for me too? Because
yeah, sure.
We'll do a T-shirt.
Sure. We will find some more T-shirts for you. So it's good time to ask. So just let me know, and we will see what we can do. Maybe some contest or something. I don't know. It's task for our marketing, but I believe they will find some way to provide you the T-shirts. And I think from my side, last but not least, we've got the special promo for you, as I said. So you can easily go to our website, which is GitProtect.io, and using Git promo 40 code, which you can see here on with yellow color, you can easily get 30% off on our services. So I think the code is pretty easy, and you write it down. So whenever you want, you can use such code. It will be valid at least until the end of the month. So thank you for your time, for your patience. I hope I didn't bore you so much. So thank you, and may the backup be with you.
We need a cool slogan like that at GitHub. I mean, at GitGuardian. Like we need to figure out something that we can say. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. We're going to race through to the end because thanks for staying with us. I know that you've been back. As far as the poll results go, I'm going to share these. I won't go through them now because we don't have the time, but I'll share these in a follow-up email that everyone will get, thanking them for the attendance, and I'll let you know what the poll results were. What I can tell you is that most people haven't been affected by a ransomware attack, but still about 21% have been either personally or with the organization. That's huge, 21%.
Yeah,
absolutely
it is
huge.
You know, as we used to say, we can divide people into two different groups: the one who was affected by the ransomware and another one who will be affected by the ransomware. So I'm glad that most of you haven't been affected by the ransomware yet. So, but you have to be aware of this risk.
Now, winners for this. We do have some winners. Ziad, can you post in the chat? Because I know you sent it to me, but I can't get there right now. But can you post in the chat? We have two $25 Amazon gift cards to give away for people that were active, asking the most amount of questions. Don't worry if you're not here, because we have run over time. We'll email you. But if you're not here, you didn't hear me say that, so I don't know why I did. But anyway, that's it for today. So thank you very much for joining the webinar. The recording will be available, and of course in the thank you email that we'll send through, there'll be contact details in there to learn more about GitProtect or to ask questions from GitGuardian or GitProtect. So Greg, I'd like to formally thank you so much for coming on. It was a fascinating session. So thank you for making the time. And I look forward to hearing from you again in the future. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg. And I'll see you all next time.
And thank you too. It was my pleasure. And I hope there will be more opportunities to talk about the data security in the future. So thank you one more time.